Welcome to Mr. Biz Radio, biz talk for biz owners. If you're ready to stop faking the funk and take your business onward and upward, this show is for you. And now, here's Mr. Biz, Ken Wentworth.
All right, welcome to another episode of Mr. Biz Radio with me, Mr. Biz, Ken Wentworth. And we're going to talk about something that really, impacts a lot of people. We're talking about a bunch of different things, but one of the primary things I want to talk about is something especially reared its ugly head during COVID. You heard a lot of different things about, people having issues with increasing their alcohol consumption and things like that. And, I know some people that I know that maybe really amped it up and haven't really cut back. And it's been, 4 years now, and have spiraled sort of down that path and had that, that sort of that crutch now of excessive, in many cases, alcohol consumption. So we're going to talk about that. We've got a great guest this week. We're going to talk about, what the signs of addiction, of excessive alcohol consumption, some of the things to do to get sober. This guy's had a ton of different adventures, though. So we're going to talk about that, but I want to also get into some of these adventures, some of these crazy things that he's done for charity, et cetera. Our guest this week is Mr. Andy Smith. He was a successful businessman with a dark secret. Commercial success was fueled by a lifelong addiction to alcohol. When the wheels started to come off in all aspects of his life, he took action and discovered inspiration from a very unusual source. Now, as an expert business and sobriety coach, he helps others unlock their own potential and smashes the stigma surrounding alcohol addiction through his charity challenges, as I mentioned, such as riding the course of the Tour de France and cycling up Mount Everest. Holy crap. Andy, welcome to Mr. Biz Radio.
Oh, man, thanks very much. What a lovely welcome. Very, very honored to be here.
Yeah. So before we start getting into this, take us back a little bit. Tell us about your journey. I know, mentioned with the intro and everything, you were a successful business person and everything, but tell us a bit about your journey.
Yeah, I grew up in a small Scottish island in the Shetland Islands, which is as kind of far north as you can get in the UK, kind of on the way to the Faroe Islands and Iceland. Small island, an amazing place to grow up. Developed a fairly unhealthy relationship with alcohol right from my kind of early teens. But I went away to university, got a degree in physics. I went into retail management, and then I spent most of my career in the healthcare industry, working in pharmaceuticals, gradually getting more senior kind of roles there. And I went into dentistry, ran a couple of very high-end kind of dental companies, and then also ran some veterinary operations as well. So a lot of kind of, experience at different levels around the healthcare spectrum. But interestingly enough, growing up in the Shetland Islands and, as I mentioned, this unhealthy relationship with alcohol, I was really poor at managing the kind of inevitable stress that goes with all that stuff. So in spite of all the success, and I guess knowing what I know now and with the people that I worked with, I think, and you talk about, lockdown and things like that. I think alcohol is one of those things that's so socially acceptable, and it's kind of always just there. And I think a lot of us are kind of just managing it. And it's interesting what you say about the impact of lockdown. For a lot of people, if maybe they had a few struggles, shall we say, prior to that, maybe their saving grace was that they didn't get in the house until maybe 7:30 in the evening, and that's when they would uncork the wine or the gin and tonic or whatever, and then the drinking would start. And that was very much my kind of approach. I would drink very, very heavily in the evening, every evening, to try and deal with the kind of the stress. But I think what we saw during lockdown was that people, all of a sudden, you're either furloughed, sitting at home getting paid, or maybe even lost your job. And then the kind of the brakes get taken off a little bit with regards to that. And then 7:30 becomes 5:30, and then maybe 3:30, and then all of a sudden you're looking at the clock and going, well, it's lunchtime. Is it too early to have something? And I've seen people get sacked because they were drunk on a Zoom call, even in the morning and things like that. So I think it shifted the equilibrium for a lot of people, and we've seen quite a lot of the kind of the health issues that have come as a result of that.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Andy. I agree with you that I think it took the brakes off a lot. And not only is it very socially acceptable, and frankly, with some people, I think it's almost like, I don't want to say encouraged, but almost expected. Like you're going to go out to dinner and you're going to have a few drinks. And
Oh, absolutely.
with a lot of people, but I think a lot of people don't stop with a few. A few is just the starter kit. But I during the lockdown, during COVID and everything, I definitely experienced that. Obviously doing a lot of things with COVID. I'm sorry, with Zoom and things like that. Is we're having a meeting at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you could tell that someone's had a few cocktails already. They're a little bit off their game. Not necessarily like inebriated, but a little off their game. And you're like, what the heck is going on here? But yeah, I think you're exactly right too. And my wife actually caught herself during the lockdown, the same thing. She'd have a couple glasses of wine in the evening. Well, that became earlier and earlier. She was off work. She was stressed and everything. And I remember I was in my home office, and she came in one afternoon and she said, "Do you want me to fix you a drink?" And I looked up at the clock and I said, "It's 3:30."
Yeah.
And neither one of us are heavy drinkers or anything like that, but it's like she's like, holy crap, like your day just the hours get all disjointed and everything. And like you said, I think it just became this kind of earlier and earlier and earlier type of thing, and it was like, holy crap. But
But it's
so
true.
how
I
did
think,
you manage that though with your career?
yeah, I mean, it was one of those things. I mean, I guess by the time lockdown came, I was actually doing what I'm doing. But
Mhm.
it's an interesting sort of, these are very subtle shifts, things that you don't really realize are kind of creeping up on you. And it was just really interesting that my kind of, I guess, epiphany sort of came. I had a panic attack in our local supermarket. And, this was in spite of me kidding myself that I was drinking to relax. And I was on antidepressants. Physically, I was in pretty poor shape. And I had this walloping panic attack and actually collapsed into one of the fridges. And literally I was helped out by this little old lady who was asking me if I was okay, and I was trying to make an excuse that, oh well, I've slipped and things like that. And I remember just getting to that kind of, and I guess just as you've described, you kind of get these little moments of clarity where you just think, hang on a minute, this is not right. And so that kind of, I think, started me on a bit of a journey, which I'd love to tell you a wee bit more about. But I think I'd been aware of a problem for quite a long time, and I'd tried the old kind of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'd been to a hypnotherapist, and I'd been in counseling for a year and a half, trying to get to the bottom as to why I was using alcohol in this way, because it actually creates anxiety. It doesn't
Mhm.
it doesn't reduce it. I know that now. But yeah, so it was a very interesting kind of turning point for me.
Yeah, interesting. Well, we're going to hit a break here. I do want to dive more into that journey, and we had a guest on, Adam Jablin, a while back, who had some similar type of things. So we're going to come back after the break, continue talking with Andy. We're going to find out more about his journey. We're also going to talk about some of these crazy physical challenges he's done.
If you would like to reach hundreds of thousands of business owners every week, Mr. Biz Radio can help. Our show airs globally 7 days a week for more than 25 hours across several internet radio stations, plus 20 plus podcast platforms. Also, video exposure on the new exclusive Mr. Biz Network streaming channel, which gets blasted to 100 plus streaming platforms, and the Mr. Biz YouTube channel, and our 350,000 social media followers multiple times every week. Join Mr. Biz Nation as an advertiser by emailing us at info@MrBizSolutions.com.
Attention, Mr. Biz Nation. We have an exclusive offer just for you. Get lifetime access to scarcity countdown timers and logic links for only $69. Yes, you heard it right. Only $69. These tools will add urgency to your email campaigns and website pages, helping you increase conversions, sales, and capture more leads. Don't miss this incredible opportunity. Visit getpulsetools.com now and take your business to new heights.
Got a question for Mr. Biz you want answered on air? Email it to info@mrbizsolutions.com. Now, once again, here's Mr. Biz.
All right, welcome back to the show. Talking again with Mr. Andy Smith. I should actually we'll put this in the show notes as well, but his website is soberand7.com. That's soberand7.com. You can also follow him on Instagram, Facebook, and he has check out his YouTube channel as well. So Andy, I mentioned a little bit at the end of the last segment. We had a guest on a while back, and he's actually a friend, become a friend of mine now, Adam Javelin, who had a similar type of situation where he came up in a family business. So he was essentially running this pretty successful, large family business while dealing with these demons. And he told us, and personally, he's told me some stories, and then I think he shared some on the show as well. When he was in the clutches of alcoholism, he would buy a giant box of like those little like shot bottles of vodka. And I think I forget what he said. There was maybe 144 in a box or something like that. And he said he would hide them everywhere because he was trying to hide it from people. So he said in his office, he's like, I would stick them in the cushions in my couch. So I could walk over there, act like I'm reading something, and pop a couple of those open. He's like, I had them in my glove box, hidden under stuff in my car. And then he started to say, his wife at the time started to kind of catch on to all this stuff. And he said, then what he would do is he would take the dog for a walk. When he'd take the dog for a walk, he'd take a 6-pack of beer with him. And he would drink a 6-pack of beer while he was walking the dog. And she finally caught him one time coming home with, he had hidden some beer to take on this dog. And she's like, do you really need to drink beer to take the dog for a walk? Like, what's going on here, So tell us a little bit more about your journey and, how you manage that, how being so successful while also being, deep in the clutches of this.
Yeah, I mean, I completely resonate with that. I mean, I used to drink a lot of gin, sometimes up to a liter in an evening, and and part of me, bizarrely, was quite proud of that. That I'm the guy that can do that and basically not die. But I would always have 2 bottles. I would have one actually stuck behind the washing machine, and I would top up the other one so my partner didn't see quite the extent of how much I'd drunk in a given evening. And it's interesting. There's a lot of shame with any kind of addiction, and you're kind of struggling to manage all this stuff, and it's really you always, I speak sometimes to partners and they're like, oh, they don't seem to see it's a problem. And I'm like, oh, yes, they do. They might not admit it's a problem, but how it feels on the inside is genuinely terrible. But I was talking about the kind of, my kind of turning point, I guess, with the collapsing in the supermarket. And actually a few days later, I had a very interesting experience where I was running late for a meeting in my car and came to a railway crossing, and the barriers were coming down, and I was contemplating kind of getting the floor in the accelerator and trying to beat the barriers. And I was just like, stop it, you're crazy. And so I was sat there waiting for this train to go by, and the song, the Michael Jackson song, The Man in the Mirror, came on. And I'd been beating the living whatever out of myself for probably about a decade about this. And it was just interesting, the chorus. I mean, we've all heard the song, I'm starting with the man in the mirror and I'm asking him to change his ways. And my entire life changed on one word, which was asking. I went from beating myself up to actually kind of asking a question internally. It's am I really willing to kind of take this seriously for once? And I think for the first time in my life, I kind of answered, yeah. And I literally turned the car around. I called my boss. I didn't like the job anyway. And I said, look, I'm going to take a couple of days off. I'm not feeling well. And I was amazing at what I did. I was great at changing how other people felt about things. I was an amazing salesman. I was a good coach. And I just said, why can I not seem to kind of do this for me? And And so I sat for 3 days in my car at near this little lake where we live, and I had everything out at all the old selling courses and everything. I thought, you know what, that answer is in here somewhere. It took me 3 days to find it, and I came up with a process that I kind of forced myself to go through around, what would I do if it was somebody else that I was dealing with. And so I came up with this kind of 7 sort of fairly loose kind of stages. And as I started to work through them, I could just feel little shifts. And I thought, this is interesting. I've not felt like this before. And I remember going back and saying to Louise, my partner, I said, something's different here. I think I'm making some progress. And she kind of said, yeah, okay, well, heard this before. We'll see. Actions speak louder than words and all that kind of stuff. But I couldn't quite explain it. And I think this is the thing. Nobody can see inside anybody else's head. And so I was fairly adamant I didn't want to give up altogether. I just needed to take a break. I knew I was killing myself. And then as the days turned into a few weeks and I started to feel better, I thought, you know what? And I was very present. I was very focused on the little things that would encourage me. And I remember one day, probably about 6 or 7 weeks in, waking up one morning and just going, my God, I feel amazing. And every morning's not like this for me, don't get me wrong, but I thought, I can't remember the last time I felt like this, and I don't want to go back. And when something like that happens, you start to ask yourself a very different question around, okay, I never thought in a million years that I would actually feel differently about my relationship with alcohol. I thought it was just completely hardwired into me. And then when you achieve something that you think is impossible, then you start to go, well, what else have I talked myself out of? And you mentioned about, some crazy things on a bike. I registered for the Tour de France. There was a charity that organized, you could ride the entire course of the Tour de France, all 21 stages, 1 week in front of the professionals. I rode my bike up Mount Everest last year, and all of this stuff's for charity. And I think, and I guess anybody who's listening to this, who's maybe experienced addiction themselves, the self-loathing that goes with it is horrendous. And I've raised a lot of money for charity now, and people sometimes say, oh, you're a lovely man and what you do is amazing and that. And I'm like, well, yeah, okay, great. I understand why you say that, but actually there's a huge personal component of this, because I think when you spend a lot of time hating yourself every morning when you wake up, to actually do some stuff that makes you feel a bit better about being you is quite the antidote, and actually kind of addictive in itself. So yeah, I've ridden the Tour de France twice now. I've got a 24-hour race across the snow in the north of Norway in January, and I'm hoping to do the Iditarod, which is the big trail across Alaska. But that would be in winter 2026, because I now enjoy that process of just wondering what actually I am capable of.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. I think a lot of people in the United States, of course, have heard of the Tour de France with Lance Armstrong and some of the other Americans have done well, even though there's obviously tainted with Lance Armstrong. But they really, and I started following the tour way back. So I can't even imagine. I definitely want to talk to you about that. We're going to hit a break here, go back talking with Andy Smith.
How would you like to have direct access to Mr. Biz to help you run your business more profitably and more efficiently? At MrBizSolutions.com, you get live access to not only Mr. Biz, but also several of his hand-picked and trusted business experts, each with 20 plus years of experience to help you optimally manage and grow your business. That's just the start of where Mr. Biz Solutions begins. Learn more at MrBizSolutions.com. That's MrBizSolutions.com.
Attention, Mr. Biz Nation. We have an exclusive offer just for you. Get lifetime access to scarcity countdown timers and logic links for only $69. Yes, you heard it right. Only $69. These tools will add urgency to your email campaigns and website pages, helping you increase conversions, sales, and capture more leads. Don't miss this incredible opportunity. Visit getpulsetools.com now and take your business to new heights.
Check out all 3 of Mr. Biz's best-selling books at MrBizBooks.com. Now, once again, here's Mr. Biz.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that are not familiar, they hear the Tour de France and all, is it still going on? Because I still follow it every year.
Yeah.
And there's not many people that I'm friends with that follow it all. So they're like, is that still going on? How long is it? They don't realize that it's 21 stages. It's, it's 3 weeks long. And the thing that really gets me, and if anyone who watches it on television, it doesn't do it justice. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but some of those inclines, and especially to watch how these guys are climbing up these inclines, and you're like, man, they're going kind of slow. And you're like, this incline is absolutely like, you would have trouble walking up it. Most people would have trouble walking up it, let alone trying to pedal a bike up this down. I'm like, holy shnikes. I can't even imagine. The last several years, there's a guy who used to ride, I don't know if you follow it at all, but that used to ride, Christian Vandeveld, and he will go out and ride the stages, parts of the stage before, and then he'll talk about it, that stage that day. He'll say, hey, this particular part was pretty tough or whatever. And of course, he's an ex-professional rider, but it's like, they've shown some of those things. They're like, yeah, if you put the camera down and actually show the incline, the steepness, it's, absolutely mind blowing. I did some cycling back several years back, and I have an absolute appreciation for. I can't even imagine how difficult that was. But yeah, I want to bring that up as we come out of break here, and talk a little bit about that, and then get some tips from you on for folks.
No problem.
Right.
Okay. Your next challenge, Andy, is the Isle of Man.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
On your bicycle. All right. Anyway, go ahead and count it down, Ken.
All right. 3, 2, 1. All right. Welcome back to the show again, talking this week with Andy Smith, soberand7.com, soberand7.com, and follow him on Instagram, Facebook, and check out his YouTube channel as well. So I want to get into some tips from you, Andy, and pick your brain a little bit and get some of your expertise. But we got to talk at least a little bit about this whole Tour de France. Again, we were talking during the break a little bit. I think a lot of people don't realize how the heck did you do that? Especially here, I'm thinking of the contrast in my mind. You had mentioned when you were in the clutches of addiction, and you said you were in kind of poor health. I'm thinking, how do you go from that to riding the course of the Tour de France?
Yeah, it's a great question. I obviously there was a lot of training involved, and it was interesting when I signed up for it. I actually didn't even own a bike, and it was a kind of an interesting. I started inquiring about it, and they said, well, yeah, but it's completely sold out. You can go on a waiting list, and then they called me back about 6 weeks later. I'd almost forgotten about it and said, right, okay, you've got a place, but we need an answer within 2 hours, or we're going to move on to the next person. So I was kind of faced with a choice, and then had to get going. But yeah, it's a great way to lose 70 pounds, that's for sure, by getting out and starting to get some miles in, and it's, the actual physical element of it is enormous, but actually the mental side of it as well is really interesting. But it's 21 stages over the course of 23 days. You get 2 rest days.
Yep.
And as I think it was Bradley Wiggins said, it's the only sporting event that you need a haircut halfway through. And but you get a real appreciation for, the Lance Armstrongs, the Greg LeMonds, and all these people. You also understand probably why they did various naughty things to try and kind of survive it. Because the speed I did, these guys were riding at 3 times my pace, and it was just. I've read all the books on leadership. I've read all the books on positivity and all that kind of stuff. But it took 3 weeks on the roads of France for me to really kind of understand, okay, now I get it. Now I understand the value of endurance. and a lot of what I do, there's a lot of kind of parallels with, my kind of sobriety journey and also this. You might see, if you're looking on the video, you'll see a yellow arrow on the wall behind me. And there was a guy that got up at 4 o'clock each morning and signposted the route. And it just meant that when you're taking on something that was so overwhelming, every time I thought about, the 20 stages to come and the Champs-Élysées and having to get over the Alps and the Pyrenees, you'd get completely freaked out. And the only way you can kind of do something of that sort of enormity is to break it down into bite-sized chunks. And, for me, the follow the yellow arrows was just the sort of the rule of the day, where you got to an intersection or a roundabout, there was an arrow saying either left, right, or straight on, and you just had trust in it, and off you went. And that meant you got fed every 40 kilometers. You had a bed for the night at the end of the day. Some of the days were extraordinarily long. There was one day that set off at 7 in the morning and finished at 11 o'clock at night.
Oh,
and yeah, so there are so many kind of I think parallels around just having confidence. If you've got a good plan, if you know where you're going, sometimes you just got to grind it out. And you say about the size of some of these mountains, sometimes you're taking 4 or 5 hours sometimes to grind your way up one of these things, and you go everywhere inside your own head. In that, it's like, yeah, I've got it, I'm brilliant and all this, and then, oh no, I can't. And then after a while, you just kind of say to yourself, look, you just need to shut up and get on with it. And so it definitely taught me the value of endurance. And also when I did Everest last year, and you're cycling at 5,200 meters when there is no air.
Right.
And it was interesting. I had a real moment when I just thought, I cannot go on. I mean, it was harder than anything in the Tour de France. And not that steep, but there's just no air. And the thing is, if you're walking, you can stop and take a breath. Whereas if a bike, if you stop, you fall off. And so you've got to keep going at least a reasonable pace. And I had one real moment where I just thought, I just want to get off this bike and cry. And actually I could do that, but I'm only going to have to get back on it again because nobody's coming. So, and every mountain I'd ridden on the tour told me that the job finishes at the top, not halfway up, not 3/4 of the way up. And so just get on with it and find a way to just keep going, keep turning the pedals, kind of follow the yellow arrows, as it were. And yeah, it was huge. And I think, in terms of just some things, you mentioned about some kind of tips, that, I think for me, it's always about looking forward and not looking back. With sobriety, I think a lot of the conventional wisdom is, well, you've got to make peace with the past, and you've got to do this and you've got to do that and count your days and all this kind of stuff. For me, it's focus on what you have to gain, rather than, what maybe the reasons why. I was in therapy for 1.5 years and trying to understand, and I'm adopted, I'm a child of the 60s, and I could see the guy's eyes light up, and it was like, great, we've got childhood abandonment trauma here and all this. And after 1.5 years, I'm like, look, I'm really fine with it. It's this is not the reason why I drink. And a lot of this is around understanding the difference between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. To ride the course of the Tour de France does not make a lot of sense rationally, to take 3 weeks out of your life and go and do this. But I just had a sense, you know what? I just want to do that. To go and do the Iditarod, where you can lose fingers and things like that. Sure. It's going to be really, really hard. It's like, yeah, but I just kind of want to do it. You've got to kind of follow your heart, follow your gut with regards to a lot of this stuff. And yeah, I'm a pretty mentally strong individual. And that can sometimes be a problem when you're fighting against yourself on this. Addiction is very much a kind of a self-imposed kind of condition here. So you're up against an adversary that is, in every measure, you're equal. So willpower might get you started, but it will never get you to where you want to get to. You've got to channel that subconscious, that desire for something better for you, because the chances are that's probably what's made you successful in your business life. You know, the car you drive, the house you live in, the business you run, you know, it's all because you wanted to do it, because you've got some desire on that side of it. And remain consistent. You know, consistency is absolutely the key. You know, people often say to me, oh, you know, I don't have the motivation to do it. And it's like, if you think motivation is the answer, you're simply looking in the wrong place. This is about being consistent, and it's about committing to something. And also finding a way to just give yourself credit for small wins, because there are no big wins on this journey. There are just little ones that mount up over time. You know, the descent into alcohol addiction. You don't wake up each morning going, oh, you know what? I think I'm a bit more addicted to alcohol today. It doesn't work like that. But the journey out is often quite subconscious, and you're not really sure if anything's shifting until you get a little moment of kind of clarity, and you think, oh, that's different. That's amazing. And yeah, so, you know, if anybody is struggling, then get in touch on the website. You know, you're not alone in this. This is a remarkably common thing, particularly amongst entrepreneurs, business owners, business people, because we're conditioned that alcohol's the answer for relaxation, and it isn't.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I've seen it, you know, especially after I left the corporate world and I became an entrepreneur and everything. I definitely saw it. Andy, we're out of time here, but I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Man. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. Great to see you.
Yeah, awesome. Guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a fantastic rest of your week. And as always, don't forget, cash flow is king.
To become part of Mr. Biz Nation, follow him on all social media platforms or never miss a show by going to MrBizRadio.com. If you prefer free video content, visit the Mr. Biz YouTube channel or check out his streaming channel, which is available on 100+ streaming platforms at MrBizNetwork.com.